You are listening to the FORSCOM Frontline, bringing you to our soldiers on the front lines of readiness. Hey everyone, welcome to the FORSCOM Frontline. I'm Ashley and I'm your host. Today, we are lucky enough to have both our FORSCOM Commanding General, General Andrew Poppas, of course I'm going to mess that up, and our Command Sgt. Major Todd Sims with us. General Poppas took command of FORSCOM in July last year, and throughout his career has served with a number of FORSCOM units, to include the 82nd Airborne Division as well as the 101st Airborne Division. And while he was the Commanding General of the 101st, Sergeant Major Sims was actually his Division Sergeant Major. Now you guys are
damn good team, Sergeant Major.
It was.
And now y'all are back together. Sergeant Major Sims, you've been here before with me, and I'm glad, sir, that we were able to catch up with you. And you both travel a ton, so I'm glad we were able to get this on the calendar. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Ashley.
Absolutely. So I say absolutely a lot, too. So there are a lot of things we could talk about today, but I think the first thing, FORSCOM's main mission is readiness and ready forces. So let's start there. Like I said, you travel a lot. You've been to NTC, JRTC. You've seen our soldiers on the ground in action. So what are you seeing?
I'll tell you, first off, there's an enthusiasm for the profession. I love it. I always say when I'm with SAR Major and we do travel a lot and see the forces, all that's good about the Army comes through FORSCOM. We get to go to the pre-command courses, talk to people, get our commanders, Command Sgt. Majors excited about their future jobs, leading. We come in to lead. We get to go to the training centers that you just talked about, JRTC and NTC, and you see them executing the profession in the field. And then we get to go to the units themselves, watch their training methodology, and then the formations themselves. And I'll tell you what really stood out to me when we went to the different training areas is first and foremost that enthusiasm for the profession, but really that mastery of that fundamental level of execution. We are winning the first fight. Our junior leaders are executing. It's the precision of the drill. They know what to do. They've executed it routinely. And now in conflict, they're able to do so and put the enemy at a position of disadvantage. And that's what's impressed me the most of our ability to execute at that echelon.
All right. What about you, Sergeant Major?
I think my favorite visits in the almost 3 years I've been here is going to National Training Center and JRTCs because I get the chance to get down with the soldiers and see what they're doing. And just like General Poppas said, we are winning the first fight. The things I like to focus on when I go to both training centers is our sustainment because if we can't sustain our forces forward, we're going to be in trouble. So I always put a refocused effort on how our sustainers are doing, and then I tie the sergeants major and the first sergeants in that understanding that, hey, back in the day, you're not a fighting first sergeant, you're not a fighting sergeant major. You actually have to sustain the force, so the boss has that decision space. So it's been great, and I think seeing the improvement over the past almost 3 years, it makes me feel good. That our younger sergeants major are starting to understand their role as a sergeant major, and the first sergeants are understanding, hey, this is my role, and I have to execute this in order to ensure that we're fueled, we're fed, we're fixed, etc., and so forth. So it's winning matters, and seeing our folks out there winning and getting after it has been great.
Now, on another podcast that you did, you talked about suiting up with Geronimo at JRTC and going in and working with them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's great, because our two opposing forces at both training centers are amazing soldiers, and they train our brigades to be ready for combat. And they give them, those problem sets that are like, hey, I thought I was invincible, but you're really not. You had 4 guys just take on a whole company. But it's amazing to be with both. So like suiting up with Geronimo was a lot of fun because as soon as I got out of the vehicle, I made contact with not the enemy, but the 101st Airborne Division. But what I really got to see them actually do the fundamentals. So people actually got down behind cover, started returning fire towards us, and then they maneuvered on us. So I was like, winning the first fight. So
yeah.
They are actually out there doing that. And just last rotation at the National Training Center, I went up in Sokol. And I got to see the array of the battlefield on the enemy side. That's, the 11th ACR folks. Mm-hmm. And then also went and tried to engage with the rotation in the box, the folks out of 3ID. But we got shot down by ADA.
That's never a good thing,
That's never a good thing. But I try to make it a point, when I go out there to spend time with our two, with Geronimo and with Black Horse, because it's important. And they have needs too, and they're soldiers as well. So I can figure out what their problems are and bring them back to the staff too.
Yeah, but I love it. Listen to that. SAR Major's out there, and he said he observed him. He's out there getting in the dirt too. And I love his approach to this, because leadership isn't a spectator sport. And SAR Major's out there leading by example, taking part, that human-to-human contact, he sees it. So when we talk about what we're seeing in the dirt, how we're watching it, he's out there executing it also.
Right. And so I was going to talk about this later, but since we're kind of there, I'll go there now. Engaged leadership. Obviously, it's not just something you guys talk about. It's something that you are really doing. And so why is it so important to both of you? And sir, I guess I can start with you.
Well, first, it's the Army. The Army is a people business. It's all about people. And you have to have that human contact, and it's a 24/7 engagement that you have as a leader. Yeah. You don't put the uniform on, and I'm in the Army when I'm in a uniform, and I'm out of the Army when I'm not. 24/7, you represent it, and you have to have an understanding of the individuals, and it's about human performance and capacity. In order to get the best out of the individual and then coalesce them as a team, you have to know them. You have to know their strengths. You have to know their weaknesses. You have to know their family. What are their family goals? What are the challenges? And you work with them to address them. And it's about shared experience, not just shared successes, but also those shared hardships. That's what coalesces a team and forms it. And you can't do that from far. You can't do it by text. You can't do it teleworking. You got to be in. A formation doesn't maneuver.
Yeah.
In the digital space. It maneuvers in the physical space.
Sure.
And a leader has to be there and has to know the individuals.
Well, and to be in a unit and have somebody just say, hey, how's X, Y, and Z? Or I know your wife was going through this. How's that going? That makes somebody feel better, to have somebody know what's going on in your life.
Absolutely. And then the human performance. If you've got a concern that's taking place, if your family, if your spouse is in the hospital, your child's sick, and you're not performing that day as a leader, I've got to recognize that is an issue, and that's going to take your focus. So how do we mitigate that? How do we support you to overcome that, but have the personal knowledge that that's what's impacting you that day, so we can get the full performance out of you that day, fully knowing that these things are I would not say distracting, but are impacting your decision making.
Yeah. What about you, Sergeant Major? I know a previous podcast, I keep going back to this because I listened to you while you were doing it, but you were talking about doing PT and leading from the front and, not just talking about things, but actually doing them. Yeah,
so I think I'll give you another example, which it's powerful to the divisions when we do this, is when I travel with the staff director at SAR Majors. So I'll bring the G1, the G3, the G4. I mean, because I always get questions about, hey, what's up with our, why can't we get these rucksacks? Why, how come I don't have enough people? How come, we don't have A, B, or C? Or why did you task me with this? So I'll actually bring that director at SAR Major down when I engage with divisions, brigades, or whatever. So that way they see the problem, and they have that direct link right back to that staff directorate that can help to solve that problem. So, I mean, it's important. I travel a lot, and, I think I frequent flyer miles on all the airlines. But it's worth the time for me to do that, because I owe our corps and our divisions and our brigades and our battalions, I owe them that be able to fix those problems for them, because there's a lot of things that they struggle with, and all they need is a little bit somebody from the higher headquarters to help them out. And so and I have a direct link to the SAR Major of the Army, and so that's another. If they have some policy stuff they want to talk about, that me being in the senior enlisted council, I can bring that up to the SAR Major Army, and we can start addressing some of our policies as well. But it's just being out there, executing that kind of stuff, but being out there in the dirt and the weeds with the soldiers, it makes a difference, especially when they see you sweating and low crawling with them and stuff like that. Like, oh, Sergeant Major, I don't feel good later, but I still like to do it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And we're expected to be there as a leader, and that's at Echelon. And we're afforded the opportunity to do that. Starting at PT in the morning, that's the time committed to it. Nothing else is taking place. Right. PT, be there, be present. And then you lead it. Right face, step off. You've had discussion. You've seen it. And then you're leading that formation as you move forward. And throughout the day, whatever training event is taking place, leaders need to be present. That's how you build that trust. Yeah. And that's how you build confidence in the formation. And also, if you're a leader at Echelon, you've got the experience. So you should be able to, if you're executing that battle drill, whatever it may be, the leader should be there to ensure, first, you're the expert of the task, and you're ensuring that's being executed to the standard that's been identified. And you're enforcing that standard.
And I think it all leads back to, we've talked about this a lot, cohesive teams. And
Cohesive teams.
Yeah, everybody, you're all together and doing things, and your leadership's there with you. So, sir, you talk a lot about the future fight, one of your 4 wins, and you've had quite a few opportunities to see modernization efforts. 18th Airborne Corps just did Scarlet Dragon. You visited the Natick Soldier Center, and then even the Institute for Creative Technologies out in California. Sergeant Major, I know you were in Natick as well. So, what's exciting you about these things that you're seeing?
Well, it's exciting because we're at an inflection point. SAR Major and I have been together a number of times. And when we were in the 101st, we deployed, but that was a low-tech enemy that we faced. And we can't have an expectation that we're going to have the technological overmatch to our foe of the future. So what I'm excited about, whether it's when we went out to LA, when we went to the innovation lab here, when we go up to Natick Labs, it's the ability to bring these future capabilities to bear on the enemy of the future. But they're present today. So how do we manifest what they're doing, create that capability, bring it into the formation, train on it so that we can apply it effectively? But and then I'll tell you that you just talked about Scarlet Dragon and what, Eric Carolla, predecessor in 18th Airborne Corps, he drives innovation. C.D. Donahue picks that up. That's their DNA. And you can see that. You can see the down trace. But the beauty is how do you use data? How do you use technology to give this abundance of data that we have and make it manageable and facilitate and accelerate our decision-making into a very lethal means? And that's what we're doing, and that's what excites me from what I see, how we're doing that. And then we have data and information overmatch and our ability to process and apply it. That excites me greatly.
Well, and going back to Scarlet Dragon and the Corps' innovation, I just saw that 3 Corps is now doing an innovation thing too. So that mindset is trickling down elsewhere.
It is, and I highlight that because we went to Scarlet Dragon with 18th, and it fell and it was nested with CENTCOM. 3rd Corps is doing that. Sean Bernabe, it's his DNA. I'd say it's the DNA of the leaders coming up today, and they've grown up with that.
Yeah.
And then additionally, 75th Innovation Lab. Everybody has these labs coming up. What we need to do also is, now at this Echelon, how can we pull those together? So almost like but a fusion in terms so you get all that intellectual capacity and energy together. They can bounce their ideas off together. So you don't have separate silos, but you pull them together, and then you get the collective capability that's there, and it's complementary.
Yeah. What about you, Sergeant Major?
So I think we kind of highlight yesterday we went to the Airborne Innovation Center right here on Fort Bragg, and there was a young lieutenant over there, and she stole the room. And how she articulated what they were doing innovation-wise for the soldiers of the 82nd Airborne Division with training aids, et cetera, and so forth. It was awesome to watch, and especially when there was a lieutenant colonel there, a couple of NCOs, but she had the command of that building and what they were doing to execute those tasks, which is it reminds me of like when I went to visit Cohort 1 at the software factory in Austin. And those folks have been there for a while. I can't wait till those cohorts start coming back out to the Army. So that way, with all the innovation centers, like Fort Campbell has one, Fort Bragg, you name the camp, post, and station. That way, they can plug that in there. And he was talking about getting all those people together for synergy to solve a problem of the future. Yeah. They don't know what they're solving, but they're going to solve something that's going to have an impact of that future 2030 Army.
Yeah.
And she stood out. I'll give her Jen, lieutenant, recent graduate of Marquette University, great Wisconsin school, and I think they're number 2 in their bracket, by the way, with upcoming basketball. And there was a CEO with us, and he had with him his innovation chief operating officer. And afterwards, they were talking about it. I said, "Who is this?" I said, "Is she 26, 27?" Because I didn't understand rank. I said, "Lieutenant, 22 to 25, just out of college." But they stood back. Dominated the room, passionate about what she's doing, and the only limb fact that we have is her own initiative, and she realizes that, and she's driving the whole formation behind her.
How amazing!
Yeah. It stood out to them.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, you can't hire her away. By the way, we need this.
We're gonna keep her."
Yeah, but it's inspiring to see that, and other people in there. There was a staff sergeant in there that was brought forward great ideas, and that's the collective that we have to have, that they're embraced, they can work it, they can discuss it, and then they come forward with, here it's material solutions, and others there's digital solutions. And I say marry those up together.
Yeah. And so we talked a little bit about, you two deployed together with the 101st. And now we are talking about modernization. We're talking about all these digital things and platforms. So how are you seeing things change from, 2018 to the future fight and what that might look like?
I'll say when I first came into command for Battalion Brigade, even at division, I used to act, 2005, taking battalion command. I used to say, our future is written. I thought it was brilliant, but it just is, because I could tell you where we were going, the time horizon we're going. We could study the physical terrain of that location. You could actually study the human terrain, every tribal leader, and we've had a database on that. The future fight is not that predictable, and we have to be prepared. You have to be ready, and ready for what? Ready for so much more. And we're adjusting in the time frame that we had our fight, the 20 years of continuous conflict. The brigade became the center of gravity. We rotated brigades for it. They're brigades fights. We enhanced the brigade capability to be a unilateral entity that could fight, plan, coordinate, execute, AAR, and prepare for the next fight unilaterally. The large-scale combat operations by scope and scale, we're elevating that up. The principal tactical fighting formation is going to be the division. That's part of the change. We have to change the scope, scale, and depth of the fight and the complexity of it. So as we're moving forward, we're talking about winning the first fight at the edge of the bayonet. We also have to elevate up so that our battalions, our brigades can start synchronizing all the war-fighting functions in a multi-domain fight to include cyber and space. Not resident capabilities at that echelon yet, because they have to be able to inform at the division level. If that's your main fighting function, we have to change a little bit of structure, bring capability in and expertise, but then also be able to fight the division so that they can set the conditions for the lower echelon maneuver elements. And the division's not alone, because you have a joint task force and a theater army that are going to be setting the conditions for the division and the corps. In order to do that, there's a complexity there and a level of maturity of the leadership in order to synchronize that. We've got to work to that level, and that's the path we're on. So when we talk about winning the first fight, it's getting that echelons of competency at the brigade and the division. It's predictability, identifying transitions, plans in advance. We don't high-five after the first battle, because guess what? There's still 59 more minutes of this game to go.
Sure. Did you want to add anything?
I think what I'll add is how we're getting after it. So the 1st Infantry Division, the 1st Armor Division, and the 1st Cav Division all took their division talks, if you will, to the box at NTC. So, I mean, they're learning how to be that center of gravity again, like back before the global war on terror, divisions were the unit of action, and before we turned it to brigade. So, I mean, it's going to take some training. It's going to take some time. But to see those folks out there, with the problem set of the weather, communications, having to do, staff planning, and we don't want everybody in this one huge giant tent. We got to put people in other locations so, one bomb doesn't take them all out. So we're going to get that muscle memory back. And with the boss's training guidance and the way forward, like the division being the unit of action, that's going to definitely it's going to be a little bit learning curve, but we're going to be able to do it.
Yeah. And so one of the things you mentioned was, this is multi-domain. This isn't just, on the ground. It's not just in the sea, wherever. There's cyber and space as well. So we're having to work with other services. So have you seen that in action at all?
Well, we have, and from the First Corps, the multi-domain task force that's out there, we're continuing to build, and it's a learning and a progression as we move forward. The capabilities are being brought into the formation, and now it's as leaders and staff functions. How do you best incorporate those? I used to say, you're a young captain or major at the advanced course, you used to put the formations that were under your control on a chalkboard, and as you employed them, you'd cross them out, so you brought to bear, the might of America. Well, we have capabilities that aren't on the chalkboard that we haven't utilized previously, space, cyber. Right. We have to understand those capabilities, the limitations, the constraints, also the applicability, so we can apply those most effectively. Right. That's an education process that we have. And as SAR Majors identified, but we're embracing it at the division level. Those 3 division commanders and their SAR Majors took their formations there, not begrudgingly, but they realized where they have to go. And these first touch points, they're really the genesis of how do we best train? What is it that we're missing? And each one we're learning. And it's going to allow us to build a more formal framework through training to bring the divisions out there.
I was just thinking, as we're talking about modernization and everything, you guys were together at the 101st, 2018. That was not even that long ago. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, and how much we have changed and how much we're adapting and modernizing is kind of insane.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky, skate where the puck's going.
Yeah.
Not where it's at, and that's what we have to do, and bring the FORSCOM formation with us.
Yeah. So we talked about engaged leadership. So Sergeant Major, I'm going to come over to you for a second. You are getting ready to retire later this year after more than 30 years of service. And from what I understand, and what you've told me, some of that was actually in the Marine Corps as well. But you've worked with a number of leaders throughout the time. Can you sum up, and maybe not in a couple of sentences, it might take a little bit more than that, just what you've learned and what your message would be to the enlisted force?
Yeah, well, so to be exact, it's 35 years, 11 months, and 4 days. But who's counting?
I won't tell you how old I am.
That's all. It's all good. So, thinking about the things that I've learned and what I would like to impart on our future non-commissioned officers in our Army is, we've said it multiple times. Leadership is personal. You have to be engaged and with folks that actually understand them. So you can read all the manuals you want, you can read all the books you want, but they talk about art and science. It's an art. You have to know how to talk to people, you have to know how to engage with people, but you have to know what motivates them. Yeah. And if you don't spend time with them, you'll never understand what motivates a person to do something. I tell a story. When I was a battalion SAR Major, I would memorize alpha rosters. And then I'd go down to a platoon, like a second platoon, Bravo company, and hey, Smith, how are things going in Florida? And he's like, how do you know I'm from Florida? So I'm the SAR Major, I know everything. But those
True,
little,
by the way, he does.
Those little things, that touch points you have with people leaves a lasting impact. And leadership is, I can't overstate it enough. It's a contact sport. You have to be engaged and have an understanding of the folks that you're leading. If you don't, that's when the formation is not going to be that great. And communication left and right, the ability to be able to walk into General Poppas' office and sit down and talk about something. That commander SAR Major relationship, or that company commander first SAR relationship. It all starts with that first counseling. And if people don't have the guts to actually do that first counseling, there's something wrong because they're not reading our FMs, they don't understand Army doctrine. But it's important. That relationship that we have together is important, and the formation sees that. So I can talk for days about this, but I'll sum it up. Leadership, it's personal, and it's a contact sport.
Yeah.
You have to be engaged, and you have to have an understanding.
Absolutely.
When the two of us speak to groups of leaders pre-command course of the formation, we always tell them as they're going into command, be deliberate when you want to, with the culture that you intend to build, and have a plan and process to enforce that. And SAR Major Sims is an expert at that. And you can see that. You can see what he wants to inculcate in the formation. And he drives it through personal engagement, and he lives that ethos. Yeah. And we joke, you don't start your legacy in your last year when you're writing your retirement speech. It is 35 years, 11 months, 4 days, whatever, that it started. And his legacy are all those acolytes, all those soldiers that he's influenced that want to be him, that are in the Army still today and excelling because of his personal contact. That's legacy. That's what he's remembered for, and that's what he's an expert at. And we're going to miss him. Yeah. But he ain't gone yet. We still got work to do.
It's true.
Yeah.
And Sergeant Major, I always go back to, we had a conversation and you were talking about how you had given a soldier a coin, and then you said, hey, give me your phone. I'm going to call your mom. I mean, the impact you had on that soldier, he will never forget that, I'm sure. And that's just amazing.
Nor will his mom.
It was cool. She was actually born on Fort Campbell. It was a young private. He just graduated basic training, and of course, he was in the front with me the whole PT session, and I gave him a coin, and then so let's call your mom, and she was so excited. It's like, oh my gosh, I was born right there at Fort Campbell. My dad served in the Army, and then a couple of days later, his dad actually called me and said, "Thank you for doing that.
Amazing.
You made his mom's day."
I mean, that soldier's not going to forget that. That family's not going to forget that. And we talk about families, and they're giving us their sons and daughters, and to know
Absolutely.
that leadership does care says something. So so we're going to run out of time and I want to give you both an opportunity before we go to, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you guys want to touch on?
I'll give it to Sergeant Major.
I think, you know, you always hear the bumps and things that are going on in the Army, but I'll tell you, you know, the focus on providing ready forces, it resonates with both of us because we know that's our job. Yeah. And going out and seeing the formations, I mean, you name the places I've gone to visit, and seeing our soldiers, the best soldiers in the world, out there doing what, you know, it's directed of them to do, but doing it well. You know, the divisions are going to catch up. I know they will. You know, but the ability of what our soldiers are doing today, you know, EIB, EFMB, ESB, all these things they're doing to make themselves better. Right. It's just amazing to watch. And my hat's off to, you know, I'll say my thank yous in you know, a few months, but, you know, my hat's off to all of our Corps SAR Majors, our Corps Commanders, our Division Commanders and Sergeants Major, and just how well they support, you know, my office and myself, and just to see the greatness that's going on inside of FORSCOM every day just makes it, I'm motivated to get up every day. Like, I took my driver in this morning and put a little light coat of sweat on him just to make sure that he understood that, you know, the old guy can still get after it. So
I'm not gone yet.
Yeah, I'm not gone yet. But it's just amazing to watch what our soldiers do every day, especially with all the pressure they have on them to, you know, deploy to, you know, to lots of folks over in Europe, deploy folks over to Korea. So I mean, we're busy, but we have the greatest soldiers in the world, and they're out there getting after it every day.
Yeah,
that's great, and he's 100% correct. We fight and win our nation's wars, and it's incumbent on FORSCOM to ensure that those formations that are under this command are ready when called upon. And so we have to man it, we equip it, and we have to train it. And as SAR Majors talked about, at Echelon, all the commanders embrace that depth of responsibility, because the future isn't written. Right. And we have to be prepared tomorrow. Just as you saw 3rd ID, when they had just come back from deployment, within a week are over in Europe drawing the tanks and the Bradleys and are ready to fight. Yeah. As you saw with the 82nd, you know, with Buddy Ferris and the Panther Brigade immediately taking off, landing in Poland and being that human picket line that's out there that shows American resolve, and it's assuring our allies by presence. Yeah. But they just weren't standing there unprepared. That is, each one of those are fully prepared, trained, ready, cohesive teams that can win. And that's what we owe for the 750,000 that make up FORSCOM and for the nation. Yeah. And what I appreciate, Ash, is you do this, it's a very large formation for the FORSCOM itself, let alone the nation, is to be able to get the story out there. And what you be able to do, both written, orally in these forums, we have to get the narrative out there. They have to see the strength of leadership like SAR Major Sims, the young soldiers that are going forward, and the depth of the competence, like I said, the enthusiasm for the profession. How do we get that out beyond our own little circular discussions? Because that's what's important. And the fact, we talk about recruiting, trying to bring people in. But once they're in, we exceed our re-enlistment. Why? Because they see the culture and the environment. Right. It's conducive to excellence.
The possibilities.
The possibilities and opportunities are there. Yeah. You just got to bring people into the fold and have them realize that. Yeah. And their parents.
Absolutely.
And you know, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add, one of my favorite things is talking to our soldiers. There are some amazing soldiers out there, from the best squad, 101st, which I'm sure you guys are happy about, but our EOD Team of the Year. I talked to SFAB soldiers who had done jungle warfare training. I mean, they are doing some incredible things out there. And so I love being able to do this, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your schedule to talk with me and share this part of our story.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley.